My name is Jack Riddell. I've been a detective in the small town of Bellmore, New England, for the better part of a decade. It's not the busiest gig, with days spent on mostly mundane tasks, settling petty disputes, dealing with occasional break-ins, that sort of thing. But that was until the disappearances began. The first was Mildred Haskins, 76 years old, living alone after her husband passed. The report came in on a Tuesday morning. I remember because I was nursing the mother of all hangovers and the incessant ringing of the phone felt like a nail being driven into my temple. Her neighbor called it in, said Mildred hadn't been seen in days. Not unusual for old Mildred to keep to herself, but when her Sunday paper lay untouched by Tuesday, well, that was enough to raise eyebrows. I drove to Mildred's quaint little house, a picture-perfect New England cottage, just off the main street. Stepping out of the cruiser, I felt a chill in the air that didn't match the bright, sunny day. A sense of unease prickled at the back of my neck. I shook it off, attributing it to the remnants of last night's whiskey. Approaching her front porch, I noticed it first. A spider's web, larger than any I'd seen before, stretching from the corner of her porch to the top of her garden gate. A shiver skittered down my spine, my childhood arachnophobia making an unwelcome comeback. The web was beautiful in a way, the sunlight catching it just right, creating a dazzling spectrum of color. But it was also wrong, unnatural in its size and complexity. As I knocked on Mildred's door, I had a feeling of impending dread. Silence met my calls. Eventually, I had no choice but to force the door. The house was in perfect order, but of Mildred, there was no sign. The investigation turned up nothing. No sign of a break-in, no sign of struggle, and no Mildred. It was as if she had just vanished into thin air. Next, it was a local bartender, then a schoolteacher, each disappearance accompanied by a giant web, each victim seemingly plucked from their life without a trace. And with each case, my childhood nightmares found their way back, haunting me with shadowy, skittering figures and webs that seemed to close in around me. The real horror dawned on me when I recognized a pattern. The disappearances weren't random, they were moving closer and closer to the center of Bellmore. As if something was closing in, its web drawing tighter and tighter. The theory seemed mad, the rantings of a man who'd had one too many late nights and not enough coffee. But the dread gnawing at the pit of my stomach couldn't be ignored. There was something terribly wrong in Bellmore, something I was going to have to face. As the fearful whispers of our town's folk grew into terrified conversations, I found myself staring at the map of Bellmore pinned to my office wall. The red pins marking the disappearances formed a chilling pattern, all leading back to an area outside town. An area marked by the sprawling dark patch that signified the ancient, unexplored caves. As the truth sunk in, the cold shiver of dread evolved into a bone-chilling terror. Bellmore wasn't just being haunted by the shadows of its inhabitants' disappearance, but by something far older, far darker. And as the town's only detective, it was my job to step into the shadows, my own fears be damned. I stared at that map, my heart pounding like a drum against my chest. Each red pin felt like a taunting reminder of my own deep-rooted fear, a fear that had resurfaced with vengeance. But as a guardian of this town, I had a responsibility to these people, a duty that I couldn't shrug off just because the prospect terrified me. I had to venture into the caves. The next day, I found myself standing at the entrance to the caverns, a chill wind whistling through the gaping mouth of the darkness within. Despite the midday sun, the entrance was shrouded in shadows, like an abyss eager to swallow all light. I couldn't help but envision countless eight-legged horrors lurking in that darkness, waiting to ensnare me in their monstrous webs. With a shaky hand, I switched on my flashlight, its narrow beam slicing through the inky darkness. The chilling echo of water droplets, the cavern's haunting melody, was my only company. I ventured in, forcing one foot in front of the other, the tight knot in my stomach growing with every step. The cave was a maze, a labyrinth of winding tunnels and sudden, deep chasms. My flashlight danced across damp stone walls, elongated shadows morphing into monstrous shapes that set my heart racing. Stalactites hung like jagged teeth from the ceiling, the whole cave resembling the gaping maw of some ancient beast. As I ventured deeper, the eerie silence was punctuated by an unfamiliar sound, a soft, rhythmic whisper, like silk being dragged across stone. I rounded a corner and froze. My flashlight illuminated a sight that nearly made me turn and run. The entire cavern wall was cloaked in a gargantuan web, a tapestry of gleaming threads quivering in the draft. My breath hitched in my throat as my beam of light followed the web upwards, higher and higher, until it was lost in the darkness above. That's when I saw it, a figure trapped in the web. A body, encased in a cocoon of silk, suspended in a macabre display. I stumbled forward, my breath shallow, my heart pounding in my ears. As the beam of my flashlight washed over the cocoon, I recognized the lifeless face of Mildred Haskins, her eyes wide open in perpetual terror. I stumbled backwards, tripping over my own feet and landing hard on the cold, damp cave floor. The impact knocked the wind out of me, and for a moment, I lay there, paralyzed by terror, my breath coming in ragged gasps. But then I remembered the duty I had to Bellmore, to Mildred, and the others who had vanished. Gritting my teeth, I pushed myself off the ground, a newfound resolve stealing me. I had to fight this, had to face my deepest fears for the sake of Bellmore. As I picked up my flashlight, a sound reverberated through the cave, a low, thrumming sound that made my blood run cold. Something was moving in the shadows, something big. As I tightened my grip on the flashlight, I knew that the true horror was only just beginning. The thrumming sound echoed again, reverberating through the cave like a tolling bell. Each pulse sent ripples through the massive web, triggering a symphony of soft, silken whispers. I pushed myself back against the damp, cold wall of the cavern, my fingers clutching the flashlight so tight that my knuckles ached. And then it appeared. From the shadows, a monstrous spider, its grotesque body dwarfing my own, crawled into the feeble circle of my flashlight. The glow reflected off its many eyes, each one gleaming with an uncanny intelligence, staring at me with a hunger that turned my blood to ice. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape this living nightmare, but I was frozen, entranced by the horror before me. Its fangs dripped with venom, its legs moved with a predatory grace, and each tap on the stone floor echoed in my skull. As it drew closer, I could see the markings on its abdomen, intricate patterns that seemed eerily similar to the sprawling web. With a surge of adrenaline, I staggered to my feet, my flashlight beam wobbling as it crossed the beast. The creature paused, its multitude of eyes reflecting the light, making them glow an eerie blue. It reared back, as if challenging me, the sight of which galvanized me into action. I began to backtrack, moving as quietly as I could, away from the monster spider and the cocooned body of Mildred Haskins. But the spider had other plans. With an agility that belied its size, it skittered across the cavern floor towards me. A panic unlike anything I'd ever felt seized me and I turned to run. But as I pivoted, my foot snagged on a loose rock, sending me sprawling onto the hard ground. My flashlight slipped from my grasp, spinning away and coming to rest a few feet away, the beam illuminating the ceiling of the cave. The darkness pressed in on me, my eyes straining to see the advancing terror. I could hear it, the scrape of its legs against stone, the hiss of its breath, but all I could see was the monstrous shadow it cast. Just when I thought the end was near, a sharp, high-pitched sound cut through the cave. The echoes drowned the terrifying noise of the advancing spider. I turned my head towards the source, my heart pounding in my chest. My flashlight lay there, illuminating a stalactite, vibrating with a high-frequency resonance due to the wind rushing through the cave. I squinted at it, my mind racing, a plan forming. With a swift, desperate scramble, I lunged for the flashlight, snatching it from the ground. The spider was close now, a looming nightmare that left no room for error. I aimed the flashlight at the vibrating stalactite and hurled it with all the strength I had left. The flashlight hit its mark. The stalactite's resonating frequency spiked, creating a piercing, almost deafening noise that ricocheted off the cave walls. The spider recoiled, its horrible screech echoing in the cavern. The sound seemed to disorient it, perhaps even hurt it, buying me precious seconds. Taking my chance, I staggered to my feet, ignoring the pain radiating from my scraped knees, and ran. I sprinted through the winding tunnels, guided only by the dim ambient light filtering in from the surface and the burning need to survive. I didn't stop running until I burst out of the cave, collapsing onto the grassy earth, gulping in the cool, fresh air like a man starved. Lying there, looking up at the bright blue sky, I knew that I had faced my deepest fears and come out alive, but my ordeal was far from over.